impairment in qualitative impairment in communication. So you may see kids that have a total delay or lack of spoken language, and they're not going to try to compensate for it in other ways. So they may not be talking at all. They say about a third of kids with autism develop language normally until between 18 and 24 months, and then overnight they lose their language. So they go to bed talking, they wake up not talking. They don't know why. They think that's a different subtype of autism that does that. But they don't find anything medically wrong with the child to cause that. If you ever hear of a child losing, social language skills overnight, you should immediately have them referred for an evaluation of autism, because there's no other disability they know of that does that doesn't have some sort of brain abnormality going on. So it is a big red flag if they do that. So if they talk, we then look at, do they have a marked impairment in the ability to initiate and sustain a conversation with others? So will they initiate talking to you and follow a normal conversation? Sometimes kids with autism, you talk to people and say, yeah, they have conversations with me. I ask them questions and they give me answers. So that's not really a conversation. If you think about a conversation, you say something, I may ask you a question, you answer, and then ask me a question, or say something else that builds on what I said, so I can come back on it, and we can go back and forth. But a lot of times they cannot do that, unless it's on a topic of their interest, and then it is something that they're more teaching you than having a conversation about. Okay. So this one gets hard to look at. It also gets hard to sort of, if you're looking at this criteria, are they not having that conversation because they're not interested in you, which would be more that social and reciprocity issue, versus they don't have the ability to have a conversation. In young kids, a lot of times that gets hard to target. Also, if they have language, you may see stereotyped and repetitive use of language or idiosyncratic language. So they may just repeat what you say to them. You say, how are you? And they go, how are you? They're parroting you back, and that's all they did. Or, they may have met you and you're 25, so they decided that's your name, and every time they see you, they're like, hey, 25. That's how they're going to be interacting with you. We had one child when we first moved to Atlanta and reopened our preschool who would come running up to us to interact with us and say, live at 5. And we were all like, what is live at 5? None of us knew that was the catchphrase from Channel 5's news. So we were like, what is that? And then we also thought, good thing our director was from the South, because she helped all of us Northerners get, Southern language, because we thought it was sort of idiosyncratic that they would say they were fixing to do something. And we're like, why do they get She's like, that's Southern. You'll learn that fast, that's Southern. And we were like, oh, well, that's a criteria. It's like, no, it's not. So you have to sort of know that sort of stuff as well. You may also have kids that can answer questions if you put them in a certain way. So if you say, how are you? They can say, I'm good. But if you say, what did I do today? Or what did you do today? They can't answer that question. What did you do at school? They can answer. Or if you said, did you make a picture in art? It's like a totally new concept to them. They can't answer those questions. So they have certain ways of saying things. You may also see kids that have a lack of varied, spontaneous make-believe play or social imitative play. Again, we're looking at developmental level, and that's going to change over time. And a young kid, you're going to want to see, are they imitating you? Can they play patty cake? And how do they play patty cake? We have a lot of parents when we're doing evaluations say, yeah, they play patty cake. He takes my hands and claps them. But he's not clapping and doing the motions type of thing. Or, if I say do this, he doesn't do it. So he's not imitating those social things you do with young kids. To an older adolescent, doesn't understand the concept of being that girl in the Hunger Games or whatever, whatever the new cool thing that you're supposed to be following as a teenager. They don't understand that and how to play those roles and that there's roles. You only need one of those. When it comes to restricted, repetitive, and stereotyped patterns of behaviors and interests, you only need one of these. Basically, you may see kids that encompass a preoccupation with one or more stereotyped and restricted patterns of interest that's abnormal in the intensity or focus of it. So this is a child that may know every car that drives by just by the sound of it, but can't do other things. I was doing a school consultation once when I went into a class, and the teacher was teaching social studies, and she was teaching about the planets and the solar system, and she asked the kids to write down everything they learned about the solar system in that class. And this kid with autism that I was in there for got up and handed her a blank piece of paper. And she said, I told him to write down everything he knew. Why won't you write down everything you know? And he goes, I know more than you know about the solar system. And he knew planets and what gases made them up and how much they weighed and things like that. So to him, he didn't learn anything in this class because he had such an interest in it. He knew more than the teacher. You know, you may also see kids that get so focused on one thing. Like we had a family we were evaluating where I think it was the week before our evaluation, they just came back from a family trip to Mexico. And we were like, oh, that must have been fun. Like, it was awful. When we were in Mexico, we had to see every air conditioner in the city. That's what we spent our week doing, is traveling across Mexico City looking at air conditioners. Because that was that child's interest. And if he couldn't look at them, he would throw tantrums and the family couldn't do anything else. So his sister was not too happy about going to Mexico and looking at air conditioners, but they did. You know, so they can get something like that. You may also see kids get sort of an inflexible adherence to a specific non-functional routine or ritual. And these are things we may not notice as adults, that they have these routines. And you may say, there's a child that's always tantruming and you don't know why. And it could be because you broke one of his routines and you may not know what it is. We videotape our kids in our preschool. And when we were in Massachusetts, we had one child that every time they walked to the playground, he had to stop and touch the air conditioner. And I don't know if you've ever seen like the Christmas Story when they have what's the little boy? He has the big snowsuit and he falls down and can't get up. Well, the teachers were allowing this boy to touch the air conditioner because he had one of those big snowsuits and you had this much snow and you had 3 other kids you're trying to get to the playground, so you wanted him standing. You know, if he fell on the ground, he was not going to get up. And so we were saying, you can't let him touch the air conditioner. In the spring, we noticed the teachers were walking by and touching the air conditioner. So he trained them to do his routine. And they did not notice it. So, you know, they broke it of him touching it, but then they had to touch it. So we had to break that. You may also have a child that, you know, we usually don't look at bedtime routines or bath time routines in young kids because all kids have those type of routines, unless it's something like only mom can do it, or it has to happen at 7 o'clock. If you do it at 7:05, we have a tantrum. If we do it at 6:55, there's a tantrum. You know, something like that. You may also have kids, and you don't even notice it, that will only eat out of a blue bowl. And if you change the bowl, they're not eating anymore. And you may not notice that or know why they're doing that. So if you see kids that tantrum a lot for no particular reason, you might want to look at their routines and what's going on. They may also have stereotyped and repetitive motor mannerisms, those things you think of with autism: hand flapping, spinning themselves, toe walking. You know, it could be kids grinding their teeth for no apparent reason, kids that just jump up and down for no apparent reason. Rocking, you know, kids that rock back and forth, you know, things like that. Or they may have preoccupations with parts of objects. So they may just take a car, flip it over, and play with the wheels. You may have an older kid that can learn to write his name when you teach it to him, but when you're trying to teach him to write his name, he can't do it because he's concentrating on how you wrote the G. He doesn't get the concept of the G, it's that you went like this and have the little thing coming up. Where you may just do it and go down. He no longer can do his name. Or he learned it in red, but can't do it in blue. Because he focused on the color of his name rather than the letters of